are now listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Topic ideas, points of view, vocabulary, model essays, sample answers, all about the topic of climate change. Hello there, my name is Ben Worthington, and this tutorial we are going to cover a lot of practical, useful points with regards to the topic of climate change. And I forgot to mention, we're also going to look at linking words as we progress through the tutorial. Now, if this is your first time listening to IELTS Podcast, let me tell you who I am. My name is Ben Worthington, and I was a standard, normal English teacher, one of those that just fall off the aeroplane, look around for a job and like, oh, there's lots of demand for English teaching. And, that was me about, 18 years ago, more or less. But then after a while, I was like, okay, forget this. Let's get results. Let's focus on the IELTS exam. Let's knuckle down. Let's get serious. And let's become the best tutor I could. And the trigger for this was because I was helping a student once and it just wasn't going to plan. And she had so much riding on the exam. So I was like, okay, it's that moment, it's that moment of change. I remember it so clearly. And I was like, it's time to get serious. So I went back that evening, put my head down. One of the ways I thought I could get better was interviewing IELTS experts. So I was asking everybody, and eventually I reached out to ex-IELTS examiners, pronunciation professionals, anybody I could find, and I recorded those interviews. I put them on IELTS Podcast, and fast forward 12 years later, we have IELTSPodcast.com, the first IELTS podcast ever, and all the information I gained, all the valuable, useful, practical information I gained, I put into our online courses. And then in 2023, we got even better. We got even more serious because, as you probably know, the successful students nowadays are using tools, not information. And this is why we've launched our AI essay checker, and we're getting great results with this. You need this if you want to pass the exam fast, and it's very cost effective. Send as many essays as you want and get detailed feedback on these. And you can get it for as little as $6.50 USD, $6 USD a month. It's ridiculous. And, soon we'll be launching a specific course built around this as well. So have a look at that. Just go to IELTSPodcast.com and you'll be able to see, you'll be able to sign up there, and you'll get some tutorials on how to use it, and you'll just see your essays improving a lot. And as I mentioned before, you don't even have to write any new essays. You just put your old ones in there and figure out what went wrong. Now, today's topic, we're looking at climate change. It's one of those very common topics for the IELTS exam. In this tutorial, we're going to look at the pros and the cons of climate change, give you some different points of view. Of course, I'm going to give you a list of valuable topic-specific vocabulary, collocations and phrases. I'll give you these in context as well. And as I said before, we're going to look at a model essay and some sample answers. So incredibly useful. And the grammar point we will cover is linking words. Now, these words are used to connect ideas and sentences, and they make you sound more coherent, and they make you sound more fluent as well, just by connecting these ideas. So some examples could be therefore, on the other hand, in addition, moreover, nevertheless, however. I had a friend at university actually, and he just used to stuff his essays with nevertheless. And I was like, why did you just put it down? It's like, well, I thought it makes me sound more academic. And you definitely don't want to do what he did. But so in this tutorial, I'm just going to give you an outline, and I'll highlight when I'm using these connecting words. And just, with examples, it just makes it so much more practical. So let's have a look at some ideas regarding climate change. Now, a very practical place to start is obviously the pros and the cons. So what are the pros of climate change? You might be thinking, isn't climate change actually an environmental disaster which is going to send us all to a roasting, destroyed earth? Where are the pros here? Good point. Very good point. However, a useful skill for your IELTS preparation is to be able to look at the topic from different angles, as this is going to help you not only expand your vocabulary once you develop these different ideas from different angles, but it's also just going to increase the amount of ideas you have for a given topic. So let's have a look at the pros of climate change. Can't believe I'm actually saying it, but when we get stuck in, you'll hear that actually there are some pros. So for example, increased awareness about environmental issues. Number two, it stimulates innovation in green technology. It promotes sustainable practices. There are some health benefits from active, low-carbon lifestyles. There's opportunities for reforestation and carbon sequestration. That's a lovely term, that, if you can put that in any essay related to climate change, global warming, whatever. Carbon sequestration. What are the cons related to climate change? Well, increased frequency and severity of natural disasters. Severity, that's another high-level vocabulary term. Rising sea levels threatening coastal communities. Displacement of people due to climate change. Increased economic inequality. That would need to be expanded, I believe. It's probably not obvious at first glance. Increased political instability and conflict. Again, you'd probably want to expand on that. And then finally, increased food and water insecurity due to the increased frequency and severity of natural disasters. So some of these you do need to develop a little bit more and just explain why. And an effective way of doing that is just asking yourself why. If it's not obvious at first glance, just ask yourself why, reply with because, and carry on going. This is exceptionally useful for expanding your answers in the exam as well, both for speaking and writing. Let's have a look at some collocations and phrases related to this topic. Global warming, climate resilience, renewable energy, carbon footprint, greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity loss, climate mitigation, extreme weather events, and sea level rise, or rising sea levels, probably more common. Let's see these in some model sentences, because on their own, in a list, is okay. But ideally, you want practical examples, so you can use them and you get more idea. So you can use them in your next essay and you get more idea about the context. So let's go. However, despite the increase in greenhouse gas emissions, some countries are making efforts to reduce their carbon footprint. Personally, I would reorganize that sentence. I'm not a fan of starting a sentence with however. So, however, what I would do is, now I would write the sentence like this. Despite the increase in greenhouse gas emissions, now we know what we're talking about. Actually, we probably don't even need the however there. If we just edit it for redundancy. Despite the increase in greenhouse gas emissions, some countries are making efforts to reduce their carbon footprint. Or we could even just remove the despite. The increase in greenhouse gas emissions, however, is offset by some countries that are making efforts to reduce their carbon footprint. Next one. Moreover, the transition to renewable energy is essential for climate mitigation. Excellent phrase there. In addition to causing global warming, deforestation also contributes to biodiversity loss. That's a wonderful topic there, biodiversity loss. I mean, not wonderful in that I'm very pleased when I hear that we've lost some biodiversity on Earth. But I'm saying it's a lovely topic because you could probably find examples of this in your own country, and then you're armed with some concrete examples and probably an expansion of vocabulary. First thing that comes to mind for me being an English person, biodiversity loss, you could say it's not related to climate change, but the loss of the red squirrel population due to the introduction of the grey squirrels from the US. So it's an example of biodiversity loss. On the other hand, some argue that economic development should take precedence over climate change concerns. So we've got the on the other hand to show you the other side of the argument, and a lovely little phrase, should take precedence over. That's a great phrase because we can use this, again, it's quite universal. We can use it for quite a few different topics, Criminal rehabilitation should take precedence over severe jail time punishments, for example. Again, X should take precedence over Y. Very lovely little useful phrase. Therefore, again, this is a useful word, especially for the conclusion or the concluding sentences of your body paragraph. Therefore, it is crucial to build climate resilience in vulnerable communities. Next one. Moreover, extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and severe due to climate change. Good. Therefore, it is important to educate the public about the realities of climate change. So 2 arguments there that I think are extremely valuable for when you're thinking of ideas. So not only did you get the vocabulary, but there's 2 arguments. One, the economic argument. I'm not saying that I agree with it, but it's just a useful point of view. The economic development should take precedence over climate change. We could use that phrase as I said, we can use the phrase, but we could also use the argument as well. That the economic cost should take precedence over XYZ. The economic cost of, the economic cost of hospital regulations should take precedence over caring for people, if we wanted to be really cold-hearted. But what I'm saying is that we could use the economic argument or the economic point of view to generate more ideas. Now, the second one is to push the issue to the government. It's the government's fault, and the solution is that they should regulate. For example, if we're talking about climate change, it's the government's fault. If we're talking about crime in society, it's the government's fault and they should regulate. If we're talking about genetic engineering, it's the government's responsibility and they should regulate. Okay, so 2 very useful points of view. Now, in our course, in the online course, we give our students actually the vocabulary terms, and we suggest that for the essays that they get, they try to look at those angles, especially the economic cost one, because once you start looking at the issue from the same point of view, you can start reusing the vocabulary. And you build your vocabulary. It's the same vocabulary: the cost argument, the economic argument, the budget, the finances, all of this. And the economic cost is quite sort of like or the economic point of view is quite flexible as well, as is the government point of view as well. Let's have a look at a model essay about climate change. What are the impacts of climate change on society and how can we mitigate them? So quite a straightforward IELTS writing test to question. Body paragraph 1 we dedicate to the impacts of climate change. Body paragraph 2, how can we mitigate them? Mitigate means to handle, to solve, So problem and solution, straightforward. Climate change, primarily caused by greenhouse gas emissions, is one of the most pressing issues of our time. That's a very useful sentence because we can just insert any topic we want to here. Social inequality, primarily caused by a market economic system, is one of the most pressing issues of our time. Its impacts on society are far-reaching and require urgent attention. That's quite a universal sentence as well. I call them empty sentences when I'm correcting essays because sometimes they can be misused. In this case, it's okay because it is an urgent issue, and also it is quite clearly linked to the earlier sentence. Body paragraph 1. The impacts of climate change on society are manifold. Very useful sentence again. The impact of global inequality, the impact of child labour, the impact of XYZ on society are manifold. Manifold. How many times do you hear that every day? I would guess 0. I haven't seen that word for a while. And it just means multiple, numerous. However, one of the most visible effects is the increase in extreme weather events. These events, such as hurricanes and heat waves. Now, in our course, what we do is, when we're given examples, we suggest to the students that we expand them. And it's a good opportunity to show the examiner that you're going to get a band 7. One of the ways you're going to do that is by showing them your expansive vocabulary. And we got a little list like this. We've got to jump on it. So in this case, we add another one. We could say these events such as hurricanes, heat waves, and droughts can cause widespread destruction and loss of life. Just getting into the habit of making a list of terms, 3 words, and showing the examiner that we've got expansive vocabulary. Next sentence. Moreover, climate change is leading to sea level rise. Is leading to a sea level rise, threatening coastal communities with frequent flooding and eventual displacement. In addition, climate change exacerbates food and water security, which can lead to conflicts and mass migrations. Okay, so I'm going to change that actually. Is leading to rising sea levels. I think that sounds much better. Okay. Body paragraph 2. Despite the grim outlook, another useful phrase, and we started there with one of our, with a conjunction. Despite the grim outlook, there are measures we can take to mitigate the impacts of climate change. Transitioning to renewable energy sources and reducing our carbon footprint are crucial steps towards slowing down global warming. So starting with the gerund there, transitioning to renewable sources. I like this sentence because it's not wordy. It's quite common for essay writers, both native and non-native English speakers. This is why the IELTS is difficult, because even native English speakers would struggle. But if we start with like this, transitioning to renewable energy sources and XYZ, we're immediately jumping into it. Instead of saying, there are a range of measures that we can take, such as transitioning to renewable energy, but just starting with a verb, transitioning, the gerund form, transitioning to renewable energy sources and reducing our carbon footprint are crucial steps towards slowing down global warming. Lovely sentence. Now let's develop that idea further. Moreover, building climate resilience in vulnerable communities can help them adapt to changing conditions and recover from climate-related disasters. On the other hand, Addressing the root cause of the problem requires systemic changes in our economic and political systems to prioritize sustainability over short-term gains. Another very useful sentence. On the other hand, addressing the root cause of the problem requires systemic changes. Wonderful. Conclusion. In conclusion, climate change poses significant challenges to society. But with concerted effort and systemic changes, we can mitigate its impacts. It is our collective responsibility to safeguard our planet for future generations. Super. Very concise essay there, and not very wordy, but we get the idea and probably get score high for task response there, because we've looked at the impacts and we proposed ideas to mitigate them. Questions. Why is climate change a significant issue for society? Part 3 question, sorry. Climate change is a significant issue for society because it affects almost every aspect of our lives. From the food we eat to the weather we experience, climate change has far-reaching impacts. For example, extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and severe. These cause destruction and loss of life. Furthermore, climate change is also making water insecurity more common, and this could lead to conflicts such as mass migrations. Therefore, it's crucial we take action to mitigate the impacts of climate change. How many times are we going to say mitigate today? I've counted at least 3. Question number 2. Should governments invest more in renewable energy? Now, here's another pro tip for you. I've been teaching this tip to one of our private students, and we've been able to get fantastic results. So when you get a question that starts with should, a speaking question obviously, should people be more aware of the impact of video games? Should people pay more attention to their social media usage? You need to jump in with both feet. And I'm suggesting this to students who are hovering around a band 6, band 7. You need to jump in with both feet. This is your opportunity now to sound natural and to offer some intonation. The examiner has opened the door for you to show your skills of intonation. For example, should governments invest more in renewable energy? Definitely, governments should invest more in renewable energy. We're adding some emphasis here. Now, of course, I exaggerated a little bit. And when you do it, when you practice this, you need to over-exaggerate also. In the exam, you don't have to exaggerate so much, but you do need to practice with over-exaggeration just so you get comfortable with how it sounds. And this just helps you communicate more effectively because you've got more tools to communicate your point. Speaking is not just the words we say, it's how we say them, it's the delivery, and this is an excellent opportunity for you to jump in with both feet and say, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, government should invest more in renewable energy. And especially if you're from a country that doesn't have the same intonation patterns, or it might be a little bit more reserved, such as my Chinese student. I realized that when she was talking, there wasn't so much intonation. So injecting this in a safe way helped the comprehension of the listener immensely. It also boosted her confidence as well, I believe. Anyway, next sentence. This is not only beneficial for the environment, but also it has economic advantages. Renewable energy sources such as wind, solar, and hydro are sustainable and can help reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. There we go. Final question. How has the public perception of climate change evolved over time? Now, here's a side note. If you get a question like this in part 3, you're on the right track, because this question invites you to make a comparison, and especially a comparison over time. So in our speaking confidence, we give you a framework to use to make sure you answer these questions completely. So let's have a look at this model answer. The public perception of climate change has significantly evolved over time. In the past, climate change was often seen as a distant problem that would affect future generations. So we've got our contrast. We set up our contrast. In the past, climate change was often seen as a distant problem that would affect future generations. Now, to make sure we're going to get a band 7 or higher and get full points of task response, we're going to introduce the contrast now. However, and a linking word is beautiful for this, it's the most appropriate way. However, with the increasing occurrence of extreme weather events and the tangible impacts of climate change becoming more evident, public awareness and concern have grown. There we go. Public awareness and concern have grown. So we started, in the second sentence, we started with the past. Climate change was often seen. Yeah? And then we've got the present perfect for the contrast. Public awareness and concern have grown. And now the icing on the cake, so to speak, is today more people understand the urgency of the issue and the need for immediate action. There we go. Now, when you sign up for our email to our email list, we will be sending you a ebook full of this, full of what we just covered today. All the topics, all the ideas, all the vocabulary, all the model essays, all the model speaking answers. All you have to do is sign up. That's going to be coming soon. And we haven't finished it yet, but you should still sign up, because when we do finish it, we'll email it out to everybody already on our list. Also, when you sign up to the email list at IELTSPodcast.com, you'll get a free introductory course on how to use the AI essay checker. And we're still in the process of making a course specifically on how to boost your score using the essay checker. So that's everything from me. I hope you have a super day. If you are struggling with the IELTS exam, remember, you will get there. It's just a case of putting in the time and improving after each session, writing detailed notes, and just keep on moving. Just keep on preparing. And just one final thing. There's a saying in English that says, small hinges swing big doors. And I think this is so true of the IELTS exam. You get the IELTS exam and it swings open massive doors. Let me explain the expression. Small hinges swing big doors. So the hinge is the part that connects the door to the wall. It's usually like a small, tiny piece of metal between the door and the wall. However, without that hinge, without that hinge, the door would not swing open. So what I'm saying is the IELTS is kind of like a hinge, It's that small piece of metal, and if you zoom out and look at your life, maybe you've got 20 years now, more or less, and you've got maybe another 80 years, and you've got a couple of months to prepare for this IELTS exam. And that's the small hinge in your life. That's the small hinge. And you do that, and your life will and you do it successfully, your life is going to take a very different trajectory. So it's worth it. Hang in there. Persevere. You've got this. We've got this. We're here to help. So sign up. Send me an email if you're stuck. We're going to help you. We've got all the tools you need to progress, to improve, to perfect. your IELTS score. So have a super day and keep moving.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.